Now, in this chapter, I'm going to show you something about the general Adobe Sound documents and appearance preferences. So we'll go up to the Soundbooth menu, choose Preferences, and go to General. And here is our first set of preferences. We won't describe everything in here, but we'll talk about the things that really matter for us just getting set up. So in the General Preference dialog here, all we really need to do is just indicate basically that we're going to use the default settings. And a couple of things here that might be of interest to you specifically is this one here, return to start position on stop, and you see it affects behavior of the current time indicator. So the default is to have that off so that when you stop playback, the current time stays where it is. If you enable this and stop playback, it goes back to the beginning of the file or the beginning endpoint that you have set. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And another useful thing to know here is that you do want to have this checked, auto heal edit boundaries, which means that when you make an edit, Soundbooth will automatically try to find the best point to make that edit so you get the smoothest possible transition. And in almost every case, you want that. So we'll have that enabled. And in the same manner, these two things will leave those enabled, just that these particular panels will open up when you choose these particular items. So the only other thing we really want to look at here is this little item here, which is a standard Adobe thing that says reset all warning dialogues. And again, if we pop that up there, it says that when you have a warning dialog that has an option in it that you don't want to see, there's a little checkbox in there that says don't show again, so that you can not have to see whatever that warning might be. Sometimes you may want to reset that because there are occasions when you do want to get a warning about some particular behavior, and all that this does is turn off those checkboxes. So let's go to the next preference here in Adobe Sound Documents. And again, here pretty much there's not too much we need to know about. In our particular case, we're working at 48 kilohertz, so we're using kind of a custom setting. This is a little bit more standard, the CD typical sample rate and bit depth, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit more a little later on. But for right now, we're leaving this for our custom settings. But if you want to work with Flash documents, for example, you would want to set this to be Flash compatible to the CD standard. Appearance is the actual visual appearance of the interface itself. And as I drag this around, you'll see it gets darker and lighter. And you'll see that there's a point where, there it is, where the text switches from black to white. As the interface itself gets darker, there's a point where the text goes white to make it easier to see against the darker background. And as I go back again, and it's right at the 50-51 point there, when I switch it over to the lighter interface, it gets dark. So I can crank this all the way up and make it pretty white if I want to do that, which is really kind of hard on the eyes. Or I can take it all the way down and make it very dark. Some people prefer that. I prefer it a little bit more on the lighter side, so I'm going to leave it about there. And these items here will let us change the way that things like waveforms in the backgrounds and so forth look. We can change these colors if we want to do that, and we won't do that right now. The only other thing in here of interest is the Use Gradients button. When that is unchecked, you'll see that things in the interface change there a little bit. When Use Gradients is on, these items here, like the headers of the columns and so forth, have a little bit of a blend to them. And there are some video cards on some systems that may have a little bit of a hard time displaying that smoothly, or some people simply prefer that to be off so that it doesn't have that kind of rounded look. And if that's your preference, you can certainly do that. This Use Gradients is also going to show up in another place when we start looking at some of the other specialized properties, so we may come back to that a little bit. I like that look myself. I'm going to leave that on for right now. All right, in the next chapter, we're going to take a look at the all-important audio hardware preferences.